And, Mr. President, I don't want you to misunderstand me, right? While that is a source of optimism, even if it is counted in the total sum, there is still a shortfall relative to all the estimates that I've seen with respect to actual damage. And then when we contemplate the concept of rebuilding or replacing better, that could prospectively cause an increase even relative to that damage. And then when we think about the output that's been lost during this period, there is a deficit with respect to what the country will need to build back better, right? So, in other words, while this international support that has been touted is welcome, one, only a portion of it is secure and guaranteed, and there is a substantial amount left to be filled, right? So I have a couple of questions associated with this. The first is, what has been contemplated thus far refilling the gap, the clear gap that exists between the funding identified and the funding needed, right? The second question is, with respect to the sum that we will need to compete for, we will need to present projects for, where are those projects? Now, I've heard that there are a list of national projects and the intention is to draw from that portfolio of projects. But again, my understanding from the limited information that has been shared is that this funding will be targeted specifically towards recovery projects, right? And yeah, the challenge that I have, Mr. President, is surrounding two things. One is, what's the basis of eligibility under the financing framework? How are we going to transparently prioritize the projects to be pursued in relation to this money? How are we going to ensure that the essential recovery projects, not any pre-existing initiatives that are unrelated, are focused with respect to this funding opportunity? The third question is, what's the plan that the government has to present bankable projects at the required scale to actually access this money? And the reason I ask is that we have had a challenge as a country credibly accessing foreign direct investments over the last decade or so, right? And now we are being asked to mobilize a significant amount of external financing through this 2.4 billion, private sector-led financing in effect, at a scale that we've never been able to successfully do it before. This is in the context as well, Mr. President, of the government having repeatedly underspent its own capital budget. For the last 2 consecutive years, the state has struggled to mobilize domestic development spending that was already appropriated. So if we're not able to execute on our own capital projects using our own money, right? If we haven't been able to sort that out, how are we going to execute with international projects, financing structures that require much more complexity and delivery? My concern, Mr. President, is that this 2.4 billion becomes a concept, it becomes a white elephant. It's available in theory, but inaccessible in practice.
1 minute, Senator Ferguson. Senator Morgan.
I have exhibited forbearance. Point of order, Mr. President. Resume a seat.
Senator Ferguson, can I have a seat?
Mr. President, a number of things are happening. The senator is giving the public the impression, essentially, that
I can't deal with it, you know, Senator Brown.
Mr. President.
Senator Brown, hold on, please. Senator Brown, just relax, man.
Mr. President.
He's going to go on longer now because you're interrupting.
For those who did not hear at the first go around or at the first time of asking, I am rising on a point of order, Mr.
What is
President.
the point of order?
The senator opposite is essentially misleading the Senate and indeed the Jamaican people. The 2.4 billion United States dollars that is referenced
Just
by the
right, Senator
senator.
Brown.
Allow the submission and the president makes the ruling. One president at a time. Yeah?
Senator
well.
Morgan, address me now, please.
Very well. Mr. President. The 2.4 billion United States dollars that is being referenced by the senator opposite is a quantum of funds in an envelope that has essentially been pledged to Jamaica.
Okay, hold on. That is what the basis of your point of order.
That is correct. He's suggesting that these sums are nebulous.
Hear what I'm telling you now. Deal with that in your contribution, because Senator Brown, relax now, man. Just deal with that in your contribution and let the member continue. Okay, Senator Brown, did I deal with it?
Mayor, thank you very much, Mr. President. So, just thank you for re-articulating the point that I made before. Pledge, but pledge to do what? Right? Pledge to do what? Mr. President, Mr. President, I need your protection.
Senator Morgan,
the second
I'm going to
matter
ask you just to allow Senator Ferguson to finish here, please.
Thank you. The second matter that I need clarity on, Mr. President, is governance. Right? So once the fiscal rules are suspended, we're going to be removing the legal restrictions that have held us in place for all these years. Right? And it's going to move the government away from being compelled to be disciplined to being disciplined on their own volition. In the absence of these restraints, Mr. President, I believe governance becomes the only safeguard that we have in protecting the public purse. Right? At the same time, when the fiscal rules are relaxed, Jamaica is going to be spending at a level and scale that we've never attempted to before to deal with this recovery. It's not ordinary capital expenditure. It's a countrywide reconstruction program that's going to be demanding new infrastructure, strong standards, the delivery of projects that are technically complex. Right? Because of this, governance cannot be treated as an afterthought, Mr. President. The framework has to be intentional, independent, and equipped with the requisite expertise needed to oversee this. Right? Statements of intent are not enough because we are going down a road. Right? We need to know quickly how decisions are going to be made, how money is going to be spent, and how progress is going to be reported. Right? The government has announced the creation of a National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, which is a dedicated institution to manage the post-Melissa recovery. And the acknowledgement of that is welcome. Right? I think it reflects an understanding that we're not in normal times and no normal structure of government can deal with an unprecedented reconstruction effort. Right? But the existence of the authority alone is not by itself a protection. Right? Authorities can be powerful in law, yet weak in practice. And unless they are built with clear accountability, that will be almost a fait accompli. As we suspend the fiscal rules, as we increase expenditure, and as we access unprecedented resources, the authority has to be designed with strong and credible safeguards. Right? I'm repeating the opposition's call for a governance framework that is independent, that is inclusive, and that is transparent. This is not a political request. It's about necessary protections when billions of dollars will be moving rapidly into projects that we haven't seen before. When legal guardrails are temporarily lifted, when flexibility is granted, accountability becomes very important. Mr. President, the success of Jamaica's recovery will not only be measured in roads, it won't be measured in the roads that we rebuild or the bridges that we fortify. It will be measured in the strength of our institutions and whether the peoples whose lives have been disrupted can trust the system that is spending on their behalf. To build strong infrastructure, also need to build stronger governance. Right? And that's the standard that our people deserve. In wrapping up, Mr. President, the third matter concerns not only how we recover, but how we grow after the recovery. Reconstruction should not bring Jamaica back to where it was before. It needs to bring us to a stronger position, a more competitive position, right? And it will require a level of investment and economic participation unlike what we've seen before. As I mentioned earlier, we haven't even started to scratch the surface. And external support, we need to recognize as well that Jamaica already has a significant pool of capital at home. Our banks, our securities firms, our pension funds, insurance companies, they sit at the core of our savings and investment base. Yet, the ability of these entities to support the kind of large-scale development that is on the horizon remains constrained by regulatory philosophies and operating assumptions, many of which are vestiges of the past. They limit how effectively these institutions can participate in the real economy and how capital can be mobilized for productive use. We cannot expect a modern, resilient economy to emerge when the rules that we have set for ourselves restrain capital from participating in the growth that we want to see. Right? Around the world, financial sector regulators have become constructive. They've started to encourage responsible participation in what is effectively national development. It's not about recklessness. It's about setting thoughtful, risk-aware frameworks that allow for the mobilization of domestic capital, while maintaining prudence, maintaining transparency and stability. Jamaica must not remain an outlier, and we can't afford to, given where we are and what we need to do. Right? Asking our institutions to support growth while designing rules that hamstring them is counterintuitive and counterproductive. Right? Mr. President, this period of rebuilding, I think, presents an opportunity for us to create targeted incentives that encourage the participation of financial institutions and capital into productive activity, especially at this time into projects that are linked to the reconstruction and resilience efforts of our nation. If we're serious about building back better, then we must also figure out how we facilitate financing of this from our own local stock. As we borrow externally, we must in parallel unlock Jamaican capital to participate in the rebuilding of our economy. This means, among other things, Mr. President, modernizing our regulations and looking at how we can bring Jamaica into the 21st century. It's not about taking greater risks with our financial system. It's about taking greater responsibility about how we allocate our own capital here at home. Right? Jamaica's reconstruction can't only be financed from abroad. And there will be a lot of value created from the reconstruction efforts. We need to retain some of that here. In closing, Mr. President, we began by acknowledging what has taken us here and how the fiscal rules were born and the sacrifice associated with them and the discipline that it has created. Today's suspension is not a rejection of that discipline. It's a response to an unprecedented need, which can't be denied. But we have to look at the context. We have to look at the fact that suspending the fiscal rules and going down an uncharted territory has its risks, and it has to be managed very carefully. We have to figure how we fill out the funding associated with the recovery efforts. We have to figure out how we unlock our own capital here. And we have to remember that the confluence of events and the various things that we have to manage need to be done with the people of Jamaica at the center. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Small Ferguson. Minister. Senator Morgan. Anybody else? Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, other members of the Senate, I rise today in support of this order, an order grounded in law. This order, grounded in law,